Somewhere right now, one person is about to make a decision that will affect thousands of lives. Your boss, your president, the head of your household. You hand that kind of power to a single human being almost every day of your life. You barely question it. But the real story behind why humans do this is far stranger and far older than you think. For most of human history, giving one person total, unchecked power was treated as one of the most dangerous things a group could allow, not just a moral objection, a survival strategy. Your ancestors worked this out long before kings, before crowns, before thrones existed at all. Anthropologist Christopher Boehm spent decades studying hunter-gatherer societies, some of the closest living approximations we have to how small human groups organized power for most of our species' existence. What he documented challenged a popular assumption that humans naturally fall in line behind the strongest individual. Instead, he found something closer to the opposite. Small bands actively worked together to keep any one member from dominating the rest. They mocked bullies, excluded them, in extreme cases, banded together against them. Boehm called this pattern a reverse dominance hierarchy. The group doesn't simply follow the strongest member. In many cases, the group actively polices them. Why would a species build social habits around suppressing power instead of rewarding it? Because concentrated power is a liability, not just unfair. One person controlling food, alliances, and decisions is one bad call, one fit of rage, one moment of paranoia away from damaging the whole group. That wariness didn't disappear with agriculture. It's part of why you still feel a flicker of unease around someone who accumulates control too quickly, even when nothing has gone wrong yet. So, how did kings happen at all? Once farming produced surplus grain, everything shifted. Someone had to store it, guard it, and decide who got it. Populations grew too large for gossip and small group pressure to keep ambitious individuals in check the way they once had. Hierarchies scaled up because the coordination problem scaled up. But even then, some of history's most durable societies didn't simply surrender to one absolute ruler. A few split the crown deliberately. Sparta is the clearest example. For roughly 400 years, Sparta was governed by two kings at once, drawn from two separate royal lines, the Agiads and the Eurypontids. One king could lead the army into battle while the other stayed behind to help run the state. Each watched the other. Each family limited the other's ambition. Neither could seize total control without the other noticing almost immediately. This wasn't an accident of history. It was a deliberate structure, one that echoes what your hunter-gatherer ancestors had already worked out through hard experience. Concentrated power threatens everyone, including the people standing closest to it. You can see the same underlying tension play out across history in messier, far less deliberate forms. According to the biblical account, after the death of King Solomon, the kingdom split into two rival kingdoms, Israel in the north and Judah in the south, each with its own king, frequently at war with the other. Historians still debate exactly how large and centralized Solomon's original kingdom really was, but the broader pattern, two claimants to power splitting a single realm, shows up again and again in the historical record with far better documentation. Centuries later, England fractured in the Wars of the Roses, with two rival royal houses, Lancaster and York, each insisting they alone were the rightful crown. Rome had entire stretches, most famously the year of the four emperors in 69 CE, when multiple men, each backed by their own legions, claimed the throne within months of each other. plunging the empire into open civil war. Here's the pattern underneath all of it. Whenever a society has two competing claims to ultimate power, one of two things tends to happen. Either the rivals balance each other the way Sparta's dual kings restrained one another for centuries, or the rivals collide and the fight for a single throne tears the whole system apart. Your instincts already have a preference for which outcome feels safer. Primatologist Robert Sapolsky spent years following a troop of wild baboons in Kenya that he nicknamed Forest Troop. In the 1980s, an outbreak of tuberculosis traced back to a garbage dump the most aggressive males had claimed for themselves killed off nearly all of the troop's most dominant, most violent members. What remained was an unusually peaceful group. When Sapolsky returned a decade later, every original male was gone, replaced through normal migration by newcomers from other troops, and yet the calmer culture had persisted. The new arrivals adopted it too. Sapolsky wasn't studying kings, he was studying how a group's entire social culture, not just who happens to be in charge, can shift dramatically and then hold steady for generations. In a separate study of a different troop, he also found that periods of unstable, contested rank were linked to the highest stress hormone levels of all, higher even than for animals stuck at the bottom of a stable hierarchy. It wasn't simply about who was on top. Uncertainty over who held power was its own source of stress for the whole group. Here's the twist you probably didn't expect. Historian Peter Turchin, who studies the long-term rise and collapse of societies, has argued that civilizations rarely fall apart because one bad ruler takes over. More often, they unravel because too many capable, ambitious people are competing for a limited number of positions of power at the same time. He calls it elite overproduction. Too many contenders, not enough thrones, and the resulting competition can eventually fracture the entire system from within. In other words, the danger was never really about how many kings a society has. It's about what happens when ambition outpaces the structures built to contain it. Sparta's two kings held for centuries because the surrounding system was strong enough to enforce the balance. Israel and Judah's rival crowns, by most accounts, eventually weakened both kingdoms until outside empires absorbed them. Rome's competing emperors were even more destructive because by the time rival legions were marching on the capital, there was barely a shared structure left to check anyone at all. So think again about that single person you hand power to today, your boss, your president, the one name at the top of the org chart. Somewhere underneath your instincts is a distant echo of the same alarm that once made your ancestors gang up on anyone who tried to hoard the fire and the food. Elections, term limits, courts, boards of directors, checks and balances, none of it appeared by accident. You didn't invent the wariness toward concentrated power. You inherited it. The real question was never whether one king or two kings is the right number. It's whether the people around that power are still willing to check it, the way your ancestors always did, the way Sparta tried to for 400 years, the way every durable system in history has quietly depended on. Right now, somewhere in your city, one person is still making a decision that will affect thousands of lives. The only thing that's changed in 200,000 years is what's standing between them and total control.